Well, good morning, everyone. Satellite data this morning as the sun is rising here across the east show a powerful hurricane. This is Franklin. Now, we didn't talk too much about Franklin yesterday, given that Franklin is going to stay away from the United States. And really, it's not having that strong of an influence on Idalia down here, but it is a Category 4 strength hurricane, and it is impressive. In fact, the most powerful we've had so far this season. As we just kind of look at the satellite animation as it comes here and almost rises over Idalia here, which is now a Category 1 strength hurricane, we can see that the potential impacts of where this hurricane is going to go into this part of Florida, the Great Bend, and then make its way right into parts of Georgia, South Carolina, and now a bit more of North Carolina than forecast yesterday. So we got some important updates coming here. But I'd like to take you back. Just let's rewind the clock here and go to yesterday really quickly, because in addition to what's expected out of the rainfall here, we have lately had some very heavy rainfall. As we talked about, there's a frontal boundary lingering here. There's good upper level jet stream support. In fact, you can see the tops of these clouds getting yanked into the flow here. This is where there's entrance regions to a jet. So that's going to actually help with some of the pulling of Idalia into this region, and it's also provided better chances of rainfall ahead of it. So we did see some storms that were down here in Florida. In fact, many had their power knocked out by these storms the day before. This would be yesterday, excuse me. Now, elsewhere around the country, more storms rolling up the Rocky Mountains. Look at the storms into Texas. I mean, this is rainfall hitting areas that have been exceptionally dry for quite some time. We can also watch this frontal boundary that's dipping through here that the smoke is tracing quite well. You can see right here, just as the sun was setting last evening, where that smoke is getting pulled into that frontal boundary. I was just kind of fascinated to watch yesterday the coastal fog layer that's set up in the Willamette Valley and the intermixing of this with a lot of smoke. So it's just impressive to look coast to coast at what's going on here across the United States. A lot of wildfire smoke, though, in the Canadian prairie, too. Sorry, just wanted to point that out before I go forward. All right, next thing we got to look at here is what's been going on with Idalia. And I think the most important two things I can tell you is that, or I guess three things, is this. The ocean temperatures ahead of it are 90 degrees Fahrenheit. That's the first thing. That's supportive of rapid intensification. The second thing is, do you see this convective band right here on the infrared? As I kind of move it back and forth, you can see it a little better now. That second piece right there just tells me that Idalia is not going to be drawing in tremendous amounts of dry air. In other words, the environment ahead of Idalia is very, very moist. So that's the kind of second thing that we need to look out for here. And the third thing is the wind shear in the entire environment in which Idalia is going is quite low. So that gives us just the ability to see a tropical system continue to intensify. We've now seen a more robust kind of center of circulation here. We've seen deeper convection all around that center, so it's kind of filled itself in. And as a result, we've watched it intensify. And so here's the latest data that we've got. National Hurricane Center, this is their 4 a.m. update. Let's see if they did one while I was preparing. Nope. So this is their 4 a.m. update, advisory number 11. They've got it currently at 75 mile an hour max sustained winds. I'm sure it's stronger than that right now, given that they're in there right now looking at this system. They are expecting it to go up to Category 3 max wind speed right in this area, about 130 miles an hour. And they've issued hurricane warnings out for a large area here in this section of Florida. What is important to know is that it has stopped the eastward trend in the tracks. So remember, we talked yesterday that initial tracks were here, It then moved east and was looking something like this. It has now got a much better kind of track forward in terms of our forecast model accuracy, suggesting that it is going to be coming right into this particular area. Likely maintaining tropical storm strength all the way through its trek across the United States, which means we're going to watch out for at least 39 mile an hour winds during this entire time. So this is what we've got currently on the path, and National Hurricane Center best in the business, of course, so we're going to trust in this forecast. Flipping it over to the peak storm surge, we can now see that this particular region, which yesterday was in this deeper shade of red, that has changed. We're still looking at 4 to 7 feet in Tampa Bay, so quite a bit of flooding will happen here. But as you move farther to the north, this whole coastline in here is expecting possibly up to 12 feet of storm surge, and this could continue to go up when we see Idalia strengthen throughout the day today. From there, let's go have a look at some timing. Okay, so this is the newest, what we call Super Ensemble. Again, one of my favorite websites. I've linked this for you before in the past. But the guy that makes his name is Tomer Berg. He's a PhD student. I believe he's out of Oklahoma. Yeah, he's out of Oklahoma School of Meteorology. And just watch as this new clustering, there we go, of all these models. So it's the Europeans, this is the US model suite, the British, and the Canadians, okay? So as we see all of this come through, we now have much tighter spacing on where we're expecting the main, landfall to be, somewhere right in through here. You'll notice that it'll be this eastern side, the right-hand side of the hurricane, we're expecting the greatest storm surge. But Tampa, to be honest, just thinking about that major metropolitan area, has really kind of dodged a bullet with these latest forecast updates. Now, as this moves through southern Georgia, getting into parts of South Carolina, North Carolina, it's going to dump a lot of rainfall. I'll show you that in a second. But I want to show you something that's showing up primarily in the GFS forecast model. But some of the forecast members are trying to turn Idalia, back around and possibly bring it back into Florida out of the Atlantic. And we have to keep an eye on this. It showed up as a feature yesterday in the middle of the day in the forecast tracks. And while I don't often trust in the GFS as the better hurricane forecasting model, I can't ignore it. So let's watch this very carefully. Excuse me. This is all the way out there 150 hours from now when we're thinking about this happening. So this would be out there September 4th. Let's watch that. Next, why don't we flip this over and look at intensity? When you blend together several different forecast models, the idea here is that as it approaches land over the next 24 to 30 hours, we're expecting intensity somewhere in the neighborhood of a very strong Cat 2 or Cat 3. But it is important to note that the likelihood of us being able to bump this up and push a little higher at land right before landfall is there. So I just want to keep you aware. We're easily looking at winds right along the shore of at least 120 miles an hour when this does make landfall. So speaking of those winds, I'd like to give you a kind of multi-model prospect on the winds here. And to be honest, this is one of the weaker forecast fields by the model. In other words, it doesn't have the greatest performance on picking up on the strength of these winds. I'm going to show you the NAM first. We don't generally use this model to do hurricane forecasting. It's a nested model inside of the GFS. It's convection allowing. It uses the GFS as its boundary parameter. In other words, it's forced by the GFS, and that's okay. It's a good model, but we don't often look at it. But I do like its wind field forecast. When I look at this and then put together the other pieces of this hurricane, to see these winds well over 100 right along the shore here, I think it could be moved a bit farther east, but that's the quadrant we're looking at. And seeing these winds still staying, at times gusting, well over 60 to maybe 70 or 80 miles an hour into southern Georgia is important. Now, there's a lot of cotton grown down here. There's a lot of other crops too, but cotton, peanuts, we grow corn, soybeans, there's lots of diversity of crops. And then you see that we're maintaining the potential for wind gusts to be up here around 50, 55 miles an hour all the way through this part of the North and South Carolina. So let's go ahead and go from there. Let's just go to the model that forced the NAM, which is the GFS, and we see a similar story out of this over the next 60 hours or so. In fact, let's just pull this out a little farther so we can see more of it. So very similar landfall target for the strongest winds. Interestingly enough, the GFS is backed off a bit in this part of South Carolina. And then we flip it over to the European model, and you get something a bit more like this. So again, we see these 60 to 70 mile an hour gusts getting pretty far in, but it's a bit calmer by about 10 miles an hour. That's what the European model is suggesting. So we will see a widespread area here of strong winds that could do quite a bit of damage. But I think the main threat is going to be from the flooding in this system. So let's go ahead and have a look at the models now on the flooding side of it. This is the 6Z GFS. Again, look how much farther to the west and north the heaviest rains are. This is the band of 4 to 8 inches, getting much farther into Georgia, South Carolina, North Carolina. That's the GFS. If I then show you the European equivalent, this is the Euro, right? So now we see it much farther, well, comparatively to the south, but still that same 4 to 8 inch range into this area. Very, very heavy rainfall. We can also look, if you want, at the WPC. So this might be the best guidance we have on this. So you can see 7-8 inches here, a lot of very heavy rainfall in this quarter. So I would tell you that if I had to pick today the model that I think has got this right, I'm going to go with the WPC. I think the GFS is too wet in this area. Now, it doesn't mean we can't get 1 to 3 inches there, but I think the risk of seeing inside this area 5-6 inches is diminished. I think I'm going to follow the WPC's outlook on this. Okay. From here, let's go have a look at the model differences just to show you very quickly, because the European model's got a farther eastward track and the GFS is a bit farther westward, coming right in through here, look at the difference where the GFS is considerably wetter than the European, which is in these colors. So that's going to be, I think, the mainstay of the differences in the models. We'll get new updates here several hours after I record this, but stuff we'll have to take into consideration. All right, so let's move from there into kind of a bigger picture here, because over the last 24 hours, again, because of that stalled out boundary, we've had some heavy rainfall in this area. There were bigger storms along the front range of the Rockies, and look at this rain getting into Texas. Some places here, again, not measuring rain in a very, very long time. We can see the position of the front that has swept through parts of the upper Midwest as well. And to diagnose where this pattern's going outside of the tropical activity, I'm watching very carefully the pattern just off the west coast. So this is today. Okay, here's our wave that has broken. This is the shortwave trough I'm going to watch sneak into the Pacific Northwest, increasing the risk of those strong to severe storms. Here it is coming in on this afternoon, getting into Wednesday morning. So that feature right into there is going to be a pretty potent one, increasing the risk of strong storms, not only today, but then again out ahead of it tomorrow on Wednesday. And that gets into the Canadian Prairie as well. Now, while this is happening, there's Idalia and there's Franklin. And then watch what happens after this. We see, watch right here, this is quite impressive. We see a much deeper trough diving right along the west coast. And it's been in the forecast models for a while. And the second time that this happens this week, which will be later in the week, Thursday and Friday, we still have this high over low setup, which we've been talking about. But the amplification of this high over low is what's allowing for this ridge initially to really jump out of Texas and come back into the Midwest. And when you combine that with the fact that the northern branch of the jet is just completely peeled off and north and not interacting with this setup, we just tend to get it stuck. So what happens is, starting this weekend, playing out there to Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, that's what I just flew through, we see continual reinforcement of deeper troughs off of the Pacific Northwest coast. So this ridge opens, and it's going to open for at least a 10 to 12, maybe 15-day time stretch, playing through the first week of September and into the second week. And if the pattern gets stuck like this, which it can very easily get stuck in the front half of September, where we get flow that's coming in like this, there's going to be an extended time period of drier weather in through this area and also very hot weather. And that's it. That's the mainstay of the pattern through the front half of September. Now, remember from yesterday, I think the front half of September looks much different than the last 10 days of it. So let's go see what it's going to do. High-res models this morning. There we go. Let's get this queued up by 8 o'clock. Frontal boundaries sneaking through here. Still some storms out ahead of this. Playing it forward into this afternoon. There's Idalia. There's the front sweeping through Michigan, Indiana, and Illinois. So chances for storms along that frontal boundary. We then watch Idalia approach. This is early. This is 12 a.m. on Wednesday. Now, while that's happening, coming in here into Florida, look at what's happening here in the Pacific Northwest. That's the shortwave sneaking through, really increasing the chances for a lot of showers and storms coming through parts of northern Oregon, Washington, Idaho, getting into Montana. Now, predicting exactly where these are going to put down their heavy rain, we can't. We know the chances of storms are increasing there. So this is a critical time of year, finishing up some crops, maybe a last cutting of hay or a second to last cutting of hay. Just watch it carefully. So this is through 3 a.m. Right now, some of the models are projecting about a 7 a.m. landfall or somewhere around there. 7 to 10 a.m. on Wednesday morning, and we play this out past that time frame, and we can see what the NAM is doing with this. Okay, just delivering all that heavy rain into Georgia, North and South Carolina before exiting. Our next deeper trough, it's Thursday already, is coming into the Pacific Northwest, and look at that. So if we stitch it all together and just say add on the next 4 days to this, this is the total rainfall from this morning's WPC run. So just have a look at that, all that moisture. Some regions into here on my color bar, this is the 5 to 8 inch range down here, dry in the interior. We have some monsoonal flow because there's a trough in the west, heavier rains in the Pacific Northwest, storms in the Canadian Prairie, front sags through the Midwest. Well, I want to show it to you also on the European model to show you what happens after Idalia moves through. So we've gotten through this point. It's now right here off the coast of North Carolina. There's high pressure behind it in a big way here. This high pressure cell, remember, spinning like this is what could suppress Idalia back farther to the south. But watch the Pacific Northwest and watch systems try to eject here as we finish this week on Friday, going into Saturday. Nothing in the Midwest. Watch the west here. This is Sunday, early in the morning. A lot of storms out west. By next Monday, Tuesday, as that flow opens up, remember it's going to do something like this. We have a system coming out in this area. It kind of gives me the vibes of what I typically see in late fall. It's almost got a well-defined low pressure center, and we tend to watch these things, and they tend to be over producers than what the models initially forecast. So we'll keep an eye on that, all right? Probability maps, chance of getting an inch over the next 10 days, highest in the regions we've been focusing on. This is a chance for 2 inches. And just to show you the ensemble probabilities for 4 inches, you can see how high it is in that corridor. Who's drier? This is the chance of getting less than ½ an inch and less than 0.1 inches. So this ridge that's opening up here is exceptionally dry in the midsection of the country. We see that lasting out there into week 2. This is your week 2 forecast update. It's all the same picture being painted by all the models. And it's all a consequence of that ridge that's opening up from the southwest into the Midwest. So my concerns about this go back to the big river systems, because the latest data on the Mississippi River here at Memphis is it's 4.73 feet below low stage. There's no reason for the river to continue to come up. I was using this great product from the AHPS and just kind of wandering around down here on the Mississippi River. Like I picked out St. Louis. St. Louis, as you can see here, is already 1.5 feet below low stage and is expected to get down there about 4 feet below low stage. Come a bit farther to the south, I don't know, let's go to the Ohio River at Cairo. You see that by the time we get out to Monday, we'll be in low stage here on the Ohio. Cape Girardeau, you see that they are going to be expected to get to low stage. And you can just kind of follow the river on down. I'll link this so you can do this on your own. The other part of this is I just was thinking about the bigger picture of that drought in the south and some of the recent rain in Texas and parts of Texas. And just want to show you that when the Texas Ridge fully set up, it was really about June 24th, 25th. We do have numerous climate reporting districts, including the one around Houston, that is currently having its driest such time period, so the 24th of June to the 28th of August. And you can look around this map and see the other regions, but we've talked a bit about them lately here. So let's get on into the temperature forecast. Here's today's high temperatures compared to normal. We then get into Wednesday and Thursday. A lot of this is rain, cool air, but watch the heat reopen here in the central United States while the west cools off. This is now getting into Friday and Saturday and Sunday. And let's take it out to Monday. We're going to be moving deep into the 90s again here, triple digits down south. And just thinking about this, I want to show you something about our forecast models. So if you go to my website, ag-wx.com, when you get there, there's a new set of links across the top. I always link my videos here, but click on this one. This is the new mobile-friendly tool. If you haven't seen it yet, you can click on that one, and it's going to bring up something like this. Now, it's small because it's designed for your phone. So if I mimic your phone with my browser, it looks something like this. So you can type in any location. I don't know. Let's just type in, how about somewhere in the Midwest? How about Dubuque? If we go to Dubuque, Iowa, you click Submit after you select it from the drop-down menu. If I could click Submit, there we go. You get all your current information. You get stats like I love to show here. You even get your 5-day forecast from the National Weather Service. This is hourly. It shows you what the temperatures are going to do. But I want to take you out here to the 10-day tab. When you click on the 10-day tab, it first shows you precipitation from all the models. But if you click over here on temperatures, this is what I wanted to stress for you. You will see a lot of maps, just like we did last time, from the European model compared to the GFS model on what the temperatures are going to be. And the GFS model always paints a much hotter scenario. It has a bad temperature bias in it, so don't use it. Do you see the temperature bias? I've got 3 models overlaid here. We have the European model, you have the NBM, which is the dotted one, the Europeans in black, and the dashed one, the one on top, that's the GFS. It sometimes forecasts temperatures up to 10 degrees hotter than normal. Some of the apps you use on your phone only show you the GFS because it's free, so people use it, and it's terrible. So please make sure that you are looking at the model blend or looking at the individual models that I tend to trust, like the European or even, like I said, the national blended model. I just wanted to point that out for you here and tell you to go have a quick look at the app. Plus, don't forget I got your historical data on here as well, so you can look at your year-to-date precip, year-to-date temperatures, and your GDDs as well. So it's all there just waiting for you. But let's come back and finish this video up here. Next 5 days, okay, we have the cooler weather, but we know that's being replaced quickly by the heat coming into the Midwest while the West cools back down. That's day 5 through 10. That gets you through Labor Day weekend. And as we start to play out through that first full week of September all the way into the start of the second week, we don't see the pattern breaking down. I have no reason to tell you that it's going to break down. I think it's responding to some shifts in the tropics. We watched the MJO move out of the Western Hemisphere and the other reflecting piece of that in Africa, and it's come back over here toward phases 3, 4, and 5. And just to show you what that means is that right now we've got this pulse of rising motion that's just kind of sneaking across like this. Okay, so it's coming into this area. So what that means is, see this shade of color through here? This means that the Atlantic is going to start to calm down. It's probably going to reinvigorate later in the month of September with tropical systems. It doesn't mean you can't have a tropical system. It just means there's kind of a bit of a lid on the tropical Atlantic because of this. But we do expect the MJO to continue to progress, which means if you just follow this logically forward, we're going to get rid of this once we get past the midway point in September. And therefore, I think the end of September is going to crank back up again. If the MJO keeps doing this, this is a very active pattern. But we have concerns that it's going to get stuck at times out here in the middle of the Pacific because of the strength of our El Niño that continues to develop. So that's going to be a major guiding factor going forward. And our Australian meteorologists just released their newest forecast, and they have gone aggressively high. Look at this. Now averaging about 3 to 3.2 degrees C above normal in the middle of the Pacific by the time we get into December, January. Now, I'm going to tell you something. If we do that, if we see it getting that strong, you will see a whole lot of MJO phase, 6, 7, 8, 1. And to just get you thinking about this, if it's December and we're out there in the middle of the Pacific with the MJO, watch what the jet does. I'll draw the polar jet first, and then I'll draw the subtropical jet. And if that's the case, we split. It goes drier Pacific Northwest, wetter into California, and then all of it comes together to make a Miller A storm systems that roll like this, or Miller B, which roll like that, and we end up getting an incredibly active season if you are east of about the 100th meridian. I mean, crazy winter conditions out of El Niños like this. And the East Coast just needs to prepare. And if we flip this over even farther to MJO Phase 8 in January, look at how we crank up the subtropical jet. And if that's the case and ridging builds in here with a deep trough, I remember these crazy years where we had a pattern like this. And if you love East Coast snowstorms, just get ready. I mean, that's what this pattern would do. So I'm just telling you this. It kind of gets me excited to think about a new season for forecasting. But if El Niño cranks and the MJO loves to live over here, we're going to have to watch out for that. All right. I know that jumped a whole bunch of months to get you into December, January, but just wanted to show you what's going on there. Here's the last thing to think about. South America. We've had a lot of heavier rain forecast for this area. It's still above average now. Very wet in southern Brazil. This is also Paraguay, Uruguay down here, and into Argentina. Now, this is well ahead of when we can start planting. We're now 17 days away from planting in Brazil, and we do not anticipate these heavier rains sticking around. I expect the dryness to kind of fill in this area. If it's a wetter, it's going to be down in southern Brazil and into Argentina as we play forward. I think this area is going to go back over drier here after the next 10 days or so. All right. I really appreciate all the extra time you guys give me. Thanks for listening, and I'll talk to you again in the morning. Thank you.